Next up, Carmelo Anthony said on his podcast, talking about all the Ja Morant drama, that he feels like the Miami Heat would be a perfect fit for where Ja Morant should go next if the Memphis Grizzlies actually do choose to move off him. He says, "This is not about basketball with Ja. This is about him being accountable as a professional. I'm not mad at him in Miami. Pat," talking about Pat Riley, "will let you be you, but you also gotta be a professional." He mentioned a couple of other things in the midst of the quote that I thought were important too, like how Ja Morant kind of helped build the transitioning culture for the Memphis Grizzlies from the grit and grind Grizzly years with Zebo and Mark Gasol and those guys to what they became as like kind of a swag era team with him and Dylan Brooks and that team. Genuinely, if I'm being honest with you, I think Ja Morant did help build the Memphis culture into something totally different, something a little bit more fan favorite friendly. With the fact that he's just this youthful, above the rim player. You know, the Memphis Grizzlies had two back to the basket bruisers. So getting a high flyer in Ja Morant was a completely different flow. But I think this whole thing with the Memphis Grizzlies, as far as culture is concerned, died when they traded Dylan Brooks a few seasons ago. I think if you're gonna be realistic about what they were the most fun, they were the most entertaining. Coming out of the locker room, doing the little dance, the whole song and dance that became a meme eventually, and actually became kind of one of the lead catalysts to what was kind of a culture shock across the NBA. Now you got teams like the Oklahoma City Thunder doing the group interview at the end of games, something that I think they've been doing for a while now, but something that gained a lot more traction as we started to focus on these team dynamics before and after games of like how these guys bond and how these guys gel. I think the joy has kind of been zapped from Ja Morant. I know he said that literally, but I think that all started with the Dylan Brooks thing, being using him as the scapegoat initially. Now you move off of his boy Desmond Bain. I think you're looking at a situation where going to a more structured environment like Miami. I know people like there's a love-hate relationship with something like Heat culture, for example. There's always a love-hate relationship with Heat culture unless you're a Miami Heat fan. But the truth of the matter is it works. Guys have to be focused. Guys have to be put in a position where they can play at a high level. There's a certain level of conditioning the team has to be at. There's a certain level of leadership and professionalism that they play with. There's a reason why you don't really hear guys when they go to Miami getting into too much trouble, despite the fact that it is Miami. Like, I think there's a lot of merit to what Carmelo Anthony is saying in regards to Ja Morant needing a new infrastructure around him, right? There was once this building block that Ja stood on, or this pedestal, you could say, that Ja Morant stood on as the guy, the lead dude for the Memphis Grizzlies, the head honcho that everything was built around. And as this team has continued to make change after change, whether it's the way they play, the coaching staff, the expectations around this team have changed in a real way. And as they've changed, Ja Morant's also declined in certain situations. As a rim finisher, his rim finishing percentage has decreased every single season over the last 3 to 4 years. He's also been somebody that's been injured more often than he's been on the floor. I saw a stat that said he's missed more games in the regular season than he's played over the last 3 to 4 seasons. That's huge. He needs a reset button that will work for him in terms of forcing him to both, first of all, bring his lunch pail to work, so to speak, in terms of getting back to taking the game seriously. But number two, I think he needs to be in a scenario where he's held accountable by a regime where things don't revolve around him. And I think that's what Carmelo Anthony was saying. When the entire operation is built around you, no one can tell you what to do, right? If you're standing in the house that I built, you can't tell me what I can do in that house. And that's essentially what Ja Morant is looking at in this situation with a brand new head coach. But now that now that the pendulum is swinging, it seems like he's slowly but surely becoming the odd man out. I think it would be best for him to go somewhere where he has to essentially humble himself. And I think that would need best, not just for Ja Morant's career as far as professionalism, but I think grounding himself back in the stuff that made him such an interesting story when he was drafted out of Murray State, grounding himself back in the hustle, grounding himself back into the grind. It sounds cliche, but I also think it could be the best thing for him in terms of getting back to playing that top 3 guard in the NBA caliber basketball he was playing all those years ago, where we were having a conversation about whether or not he was the best guard in the game. He was right there in conversations, right there with Steph Curry and those guys for the top guard in the game. Now, was he usurping those guys? No, but he was in that convo. He hasn't been in that convo over the last 2 to 3 years, and a change of scenery, I think, could really do it. Miami might be the best fit. You guys let me know in the comment section down below where you guys think would be the best fit for Ja Morant. I think Miami actually is a sleeper spot for him. Right now, sportsbooks are saying that the leading candidate for him is the Sacramento Kings. That's usually where your career goes to die. So we'll see how that whole thing goes.